it's fascinating to think about the connectivity of providing opportunity for third spaces and the development of what happens with social structure and engagement in that individual, like my happiness and my, feeling connected to something really revolves around those third spaces. And when I'm not involved in those third spaces, I feel disassociated from society or community or whatever. It was fascinating, eye-opening for that.
Welcome to Guys Fishing Weekly. We don't just fish, we hug.
Hey, buddy.
Hey, what's going on, dog?
What's going on? How's spring break?
It's been so good. I was out 2 days in a row fishing.
Lucky dog.
Last 2 days. Yeah, I went yesterday and the day before. The day before was just phenomenal. It's funny, I was going to try this new nymphing technique. I've never done much Euro nymphing, but I was reading about it and this other one called drop shotting and just doing some research on some different ways and different things to try. And I was all geared up and ready to go trying some new stuff. And I get down to the river and I'm walking through these snow banks because, we got dumped on or whatever. And so up in the hills, it's still pretty snowy up there.
Yeah.
And I get down and there's just fish sipping. So I'm like, well, screw that. I'm not nymphing. So
Stimmy season, baby.
Yeah, I fished a dry dropper and went to what was working when we were out. Put on the Adams with a black beauty off the bottom and just slayed, dude. It was great. Got one fish to hit the Adams. It was phenomenal day. So I was out for about 3 or 4 hours and it was just awesome. So, and then yesterday,
awesome.
Same thing. Yeah. So it was good. I was on a different creek yesterday and it was still good. And yeah, so I've been out. I came home. My wife's like, did you put any sunscreen on? I'm like, no, forgot that. So I got a little sun on my face, a little vitamin D, got out. It was just beautiful days here. So it was terrific. My spring break's great. Great.
I'm just glad to hear that even with 2 or 3 feet of snow on the ground, that it's always stimmy season, baby.
It is. Always. So yeah, the Buffs got in. Yeah.
Got in. They play today.
Yes, they do.
Unfortunately, you'll be hearing this in the future, and you already know our fate. But the Buffs are in, so we're sporting the gear today.
Game day, baby.
Game day.
Mm-hmm.
So should be a good matchup. The Boise State game was a game I was nervous about, and it proved to be a nail biter down to pretty much the end.
That was fugly.
Yes, it was.
As they say. I think you know what that means. Yeah, they looked awful. They were lucky to get out of that one. Hopefully they'll show up and play their game today and look a little better against my most hated Florida team, the Gators. Growing up in South Florida, you pretty much picked one of the big three. You were either Florida State, Miami, or University of Florida. And by golly, I'm a Seminole through and through. So, yeah. And then if I had to pick one of the other two, it would definitely be the Hurricanes. So, yeah, we hate the Gators. So anytime we can beat the Gators, that's a good thing. Sorry, all you Gator fans out there.
I'm not. Screw the Gators.
Yeah. Exactly. So, for sure. So, yeah, dude, it's been great spring break for me. Been able to hang out, get some stuff done and with GF Dub and do some fishing and watch some basketball and just been loving life, living large.
I love that.
Yeah. How about you, brother?
So as I mentioned on the last podcast, I did my last kind of long run before the big race that happens here in a couple more weeks.
Did you go 12 and a half?
12 and a half.
Dude.
And I did it under 10-minute miles, which, I'm definitely not claiming that I'm fast by any means. But my goal is to finish the half marathon in under 2 hours, which is like a 9:15 mile or something like that pace that I would need to run. So I'm hoping that I seem to have the fitness close enough. I think hopefully race day adrenaline will push me to the finish line in faster than 2 hours.
How much is your mental game a factor on your physical pace? Are you even like, I know probably big time runners.
Oh, for sure. I mean, mental's big. There's definitely phases. I think 13.1 miles I've noticed for me is a, like, this past run felt like a doable run. At no point was it like I'm not going to get to the end of this. Still, a full marathon seems daunting.
Right.
But this distance seems achievable, even if I just slow down to like the slowest little hobble I can run. Like I know that I'll be able to finish it.
Okay.
So it's not as much of a mental challenge, but there's definitely a mental challenge on the just kind of pacing and continuing to, like, so out here in Kansas City, shockingly, it's a very hilly city. And in some places it's like, seems as steep as like San Francisco. So you're constantly, there's no really flat ground around here. So you're constantly up and down hills. And I find those are like the biggest mental challenges of like, well, that hill is kind of a long, this is a long,
Right.
just steady uphill. And
Right.
that's where it's the hardest of, like, you just got to keep going.
Right.
So mentally that part is the tough part, but I feel confident about finishing. The tough part for me won't be not getting too excited out of the gate. Even if I run like 2 or 3 really fast miles, I'll tank and you just fall off. It's definitely a much better strategy to like come out almost at a really slow jog and like slowly speed up.
Right.
That helps a ton. So that's like the main thing I've been telling myself is just be okay being slow at the beginning. Be okay
Right.
with that, because if I can get 2 miles of like slow running under my belt, and then just slowly like speed up from there, my times are way better than they are when I get those 2 or 3 really fast miles in.
Nice.
And tank. So that's what I'm working on up here in the cranium.
Right. Now you're doing one half marathon or 2 before the big one?
So as of right now, I'm doing this one. Then there's another one potentially at the beginning of June that I would do. And that time I'm going to add some different training. This was just finish was the initial goal.
Right.
And then it morphed into finish in under 2. So the next one will be adding some different training things like weights and stuff for the next one to try and get it faster. And then the full marathon is in October, middle of October. My neighbor and I are talking about doing a duathlon, which is, I'm too afraid to do open water swimming. So it's basically a triathlon without the swimming.
Right. Yeah.
I'll do a triathlon one day, but I'm not a confident enough swimmer to do that yet. The one that we're looking at is it's a 3-mile run, 12-mile bike, 3-mile run. So that would be in the middle of July. So that's kind of the other race that I'm thinking about doing right now, and we'll see if others come along. I'm actually really enjoying it a lot now that I am through the huffing and puffing part.
Right.
So the first 5 weeks of training, where it was like every run was like, right, the whole, just like, didn't matter how slow you were moving. That was just the way it was. That was the hard part to get through. But now that I can get my breath under control, and I can, even if I have to go slow, if I can get my breath under control, it's like enjoyable. So,
I can only fathom how frustrated you're going to be on our next GFW when we go hike somewhere. You're going to be like miles ahead of us, having caught all the fish, because we're so slow to get there.
there's some perks. There's some perks to being the first one on the water for sure. So that's really.
I used to always be that guy. I'm not anymore.
That's really why I've been training, is so that I can beat you guys to the river and catch more fish. So
That's right. About the only chance you have.
so hey, that's not nice.
Hey.
All right. Well, we're here to talk about one of our favorite topics and most inspiring, one of our main inspirations of this whole Guys Fishing Weekend project, which is the concept of third spaces.
Yes, we have done some reading about it. We've done a lot of talking about it. We've done living it for 28 years. The idea of third spaces and the importance of it in existence, in your being, in your surviving life.
Definitely. And I think it's something that we just don't have as many spaces for. We just don't have this in our life in general anymore. We've kind of sequestered out, which we'll talk about. And we'll also talk about kind of how we've done a decent job. We're not experts at it by any means, but done a decent job of trying to include it in our life and how we ultimately want to help include it in others' lives as well. So that's kind of what we're going to try and chop up today.
Sweet. Let's do it.
So for everybody who doesn't know what third spaces are, I didn't know what they were until recently. Third spaces are basically a sociology term referring to our social surroundings and labeling basically how much time we spend in certain spaces. And so there's kind of three spaces that they call. There's a first, a second, and a third. Very creatively named. Sociologists are not very creative. And so they came up with the third space moniker for what we're going to talk about. But the first space is home. That's your house. That's where your family and kids are. That's where you live. That's your apartment, whatever. That's the first space because you spend the most of your time in your daily life at home, mostly probably sleeping, but you spend that at home. Mm-hmm. The second space is the workplace. So wherever you are for what you do is for a living, that's where most of your social interaction, your second most social interaction happens, is at the workplace. And then there's the elusive third space, which is basically anywhere else, where you are being socially. So it's not necessarily like being in your car. Maybe cars by yourself would be another space, but these are where you're socially interacting with other people. And these things are traditionally spaces like churches, cafes, bars, libraries, the gym, parks. And in general, a lot of these places are struggling with having people attend them. That doesn't mean that there isn't attendance, but like church attendance has been trending down for a long period of time. And so when we talk about third spaces, we're talking about how you can create and how you can be in these other spaces where you can socially interact with others.
Yeah. I think one of the things for me that stood out when we were first exploring the idea of third spaces, when you had mentioned it to me, you gave me a book to read called Bowling Alone, which kind of breaks down, I guess, statistically, our society and the ways that it has deteriorated since over the course of time, in the last, call it 80 years, 100 years in the last century maybe. But after World War II and kind of through the 50s when there was bowling alleys and people played bridge and cards, and they talk about card playing and in the regularity of those kinds of activities that were present through certain points in our nation's existence through the 50s and kind of into the 60s. And then it changed and those things kind of started not happening. And so over the course of time, it was fascinating and interesting to read about statistically the breakdown in third spaces and how that came about and how that sort of happened. And there's a whole bunch of variables that play a role in it. But certainly to the point of today where so many people are right here in their phones. And this is their existence and this is their interaction. And the profoundness that, hey, it used to be this way and they used to have these things that people did. And now it's completely different. And there was a breakdown in that. And that book pointed out these things that and made all these connections to interaction in society and the lack of involvement in civic duty and those kinds of things and volunteering as a place of third spaces. And so it was really just a fascinating read in terms of that. I'm never one for statistics and all that kind of stuff. I don't remember numbers very well and all that, but it was eye-opening to read some of those things and see where it kind of broke down and how those things happen. But I've seen a deterioration in civic duty. I've seen a deterioration in the amount of people who are involved in PTA meetings at school. You know, they call PTO now. But we have PTO meetings that I've sat on at our school where there's one other parent there, one parent for the entire school, and that's it. It didn't used to be like that. When I was growing up, certainly it was a bigger organization as a third space organization where you're taking care of youth and those kinds of things. It's not anymore. It's gone. So it's fascinating to think about the connectivity of providing opportunity for third spaces and the development of what happens with social structure and engagement in that individual, like my happiness and my, feeling connected to something really revolves around those third spaces. And when I'm not involved in those third spaces, I feel disassociated from society or community or whatever. It was fascinating, eye-opening for that.
Yeah, no, I think it's something that we're all seeing in the world of just, especially here in the US with just social media and stuff along those lines of being able to be connected and talking and even just being able to have conversations about things without being triggered or frustrated or whatever. We just don't get enough practice at it. So I think a lot of times we get fired up or we get aggressive whenever we talk about things because we just don't have enough practice being in the arena with others with even similar opinions. I think even when you have somebody that has similar opinions, you can still get almost too fired up about stuff and put people off as well. And so I think it really is about just like, how can you get back around other people, making jokes, chopping things up, getting feedback about yourself, getting feedback on your opinions of things, getting mentorship, getting guidance. There's so many things that come from these third spaces that it's important to get yourself out into them as much as possible.
Yeah, I love what you said about mentorship and challenging our own opinions. I think that that's an important piece to what third spaces can bring. I can get on my soapbox with the best of them about things that frustrate me. Certainly, all you have to do is mention standardized testing. There was a time when that would trigger me to blow up. but it's important to be able to challenge those thoughts without being off-putting, and being, like you say, being practice of how can I talk about those things, listen to other people's ideas about those things, challenge my own thought about those things, and not be off-putting, and not be, it has to be this way or this way. And I think when we are able to be in third spaces with people who do those things for us, we get that mentorship, we get that practice, and it helps us in so many other ways become more understanding of others, more empathetic towards somebody, where maybe I'm not so quick to judge based on something that's different from what I hear or what I believe, right? And so there's value in that, incredible value in that. And I think that third spaces provide us a real good avenue in order to do those things.
100%. I think, and touching on the mentorship aspect, I think in a lot of ways, they're a great way, either through intentional mentorship or just hearing and seeing other people in real life moving through just their daily life and their accomplishments and their frustrations, just learning through that osmosis of being in the same place as others is hugely important, especially in a world where you're only seeing highlight reels and you're only seeing the best of the best on social media, and getting discouraged, and I'm not here, I need to be there. And it's a huge part of the whole self-discovery process.
Yeah, I know one thing for me too is when I'm in one of the third spaces that I'm intentional about creating or being a part of, and there are a couple that maybe we'll talk about, but when I'm in those places, I feel like I'm a lot less judgmental. I don't know if that's maybe the comfort of those spaces. When I hear something that I maybe disagree with, I'm much more empathetic to listening to that than I am judgmental in listening to that. That's real for me. And that feels good when I'm not being judgmental. We can all be judgmental. And I think that gives me a place to where I feel better about myself when I'm able to be like that and just listen and not judge because somebody thinks something different from me. So that piece of it's been.
When you say intentional spaces, what kind of spaces have you created?
So I think there's a couple of different things when I think about intentional spaces versus third spaces that just kind of authentically happen. I think those are both considered. So an intentional space would be like our guys fishing weekend. We strive every year to create this trip that we go on. And it is a third space for us, for sure. One where we go and we connect and we bond and we fish and we laugh and we joke tell, and we are ourselves authentically and without judgment in that space. And it is I think, an artery for our heartbeats in life, is that GFW trip for us. It has become that. I can't fathom a year without it. So that becomes a place that we look forward to, that we are able to do those things. That's intentional. We make that happen. We search it out. We seek it out. We find a time when we all can commit to it. And it's that we are committed to that intentional space, which is us being together and connecting. That's an intentional space. Then there are third spaces within that intentional stuff that we create also, that maybe are a little bit more authentic in terms of how they come about. We don't necessarily plan them, but they're still valuable in and of itself. And so on our GFW trip, the drives to wherever we go, whether it's to our original place that we're driving a couple hours, that's a third space within a third space, right? because it's not all of us together, but it's a couple of us usually driving up together, 2 or 3 in the car, and the conversations we have are authentic, and they kind of develop that way. And so those things, the moments on the river with different guys that you end up sitting by the side, changing flies, talking, catching up, whatever, those are an authentic, maybe not, we didn't plan it, it just sort of happens. You know, you're going to have different moments like that with different dudes on the thing. We wake up in the morning, I'm up making coffee. Whoever's the first one up, we sit outside and have coffee in the morning and we talk. That's not necessarily intentional. It just sort of happens within. And so there's those, you know, those intentional moments we have, and then there's those ones that just sort of organically, authentically happen. I have another, like, poker night. When we do poker night on GFW, we're very intentional about, hey, we're playing cards, we're all together. This is an intentional third space time. Right. Same thing with meals. We eat breakfast together, we eat dinner together. Those are intentional third space times, I guess, that we do. So there's the ones that we are intentional about. There's ones that were, you know, that just sort of organically happen.
Sorry, hold on. My dogs are barking like crazy. I'll delete this out.
Yeah.
See if they stop here in a second.
But I think there's value in both of those things, whether you're intentional or whether it happens authentically when you're not necessarily planning it. So I think those are both provide opportunities to maximize what you can gain from third spaces, that connection.
Yeah, I mean, you talked a lot about our guys fishing weekend specifically, which is definitely a giant third space for sure. I think other intentional third spaces that just exist for somebody who's not going on a guys fishing weekend that I think they could go on are some of those things we probably listed at the beginning, but, you know, churches are a great one. It's not something I attend, or I don't think you do either, but, you know, churches are a great way, and they work for a lot of people to really bring the entire, historically bring the entire community together on one day a week to talk about everything that's going on in the town. That's a great service that they provide. Or, you know, libraries or gyms, you know, workout classes are a great way to, like, get together. Maybe not the whole time you're in there talking about something of importance while you're jamming out at 180 beats per second on a cycle bike. But, you know, there are times afterwards that kind of the bits around the edges where, you know, you're cleaning up after class, or, you know, hey, let's go grab a smoothie afterwards or whatever. I think just at the end of the day, like, getting out and trying to be in these spaces, and not just be in them, but, like, actively engage in them. And it's one thing to be around, like, if everybody on guys fishing weekend, there was 6 guys and 5 guys were all engaged and 1 guy was just there, like, that wouldn't be doing a service to the other people, nor would it be doing a service to the 1 guy who was not doing anything. And I think you have to be consciously engaged anytime you go into one of these spaces.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I agree 100%. And I'm thinking about, as you're talking about those intentional spaces, your father is really into pickleball and plays regularly every week. Right. He and his wife play. And, you know, he's talked about that with me the few times that we've been out fishing in the last month. He's talked about those times with energy. He really looks forward to it. Right. He loves playing pickleball, yeah, but I think it's the whole third space of it and what that brings in terms of being engaged in something that brings value to him. And funny enough, my wife and I got invited to go play with some other friends and had an absolute blast playing pickleball. And I know it's the new trend and people are like, oh, pickleball is just a fad, whatever. But it is creating third spaces. There are gyms, pickleball gyms that are opening up all over the place. That is another realm of providing a phenomenal third space. Go play some pickleball, hang out afterwards, drink beers, drink whatever, it's
Right.
happening. And it's another great example of a third space. I think that's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, I think the beauty of that is that, the beauty of pickleball is it's not the most strenuous thing in the world where you can usually don't, but you could have a conversation like theoretically during the whole game. But like in between games or in between sets or whatever, you could pull, you can have those conversations, those interactions, those and so many of these things don't have to even be necessarily verbal, as they can be just, visually looking at the people that you're there with. Like we pick up so many things non-verbally as well. So just like being in there, being open to what's going on in the space, is huge.
So good. Yeah. It's so good. It's so beneficial, like you say. I love that idea of nonverbal because you do, you do take so much in that
Yeah.
way. And so that's a really good take on it.
What is your thought on going out and being in these spaces? Like, what's some good action plan advice for somebody?
I think for me, I've built another third space with some of my friends from work outside of the job. I think only two of us work together now anymore. All the rest of them have kind of left our school or whatever. But we stayed in contact, and there's two of us that really drive the meeting up of us together and putting it out there. We meet up once a month, once every 6 weeks during busy times, whatever. But we're super intentional about, hey, I need a night out with you guys. I need some connectivity. So I think one of the big things in terms of maybe a roadmap or making it happen is the intention of who you want to share that third space with. When it comes to mentorship, when it comes to connection, when it comes to friendship, when it comes to community, I think those things all play a role in who you want to be intentional about meeting up with. There's a discovery piece too, I think, that can work with third spaces. We got an invite from, a couple of other friends to go play pickleball and engage in that community because they thought we'd be a good fit for that, right? And so, yeah, there are times when I think it takes, okay, maybe that's not the most comfortable thing, but yeah, we're going to go because it's valuable enough for us to do that, to find more of these spaces that feel good. So I think that intent of maybe who you feel you might connect with or get some of that stuff from is important to keep in mind when trying to venture into and out to a third space.
Yeah, I think being intentional, like you said, and just being proactive about it. I think a lot of times we get in this mental state, I know I do, of like, man, I hope somebody invites me to go do X, Y, and Z, right? And in a lot of cases, like, it's not that people aren't thinking about you, but I think a lot of other people aren't doing anything either. And so I think you have to just be proactive in creating third spaces, creating opportunities for people to get together, whether it's creating a barbecue or creating some sort of an event, whether it's pickleball or watching the Oscars or whatever. Like creating these moments where people can come together. Like you can create your own. They don't have to be some paid establishment that you need to go to, and just invite people. And if only one person is interested, you can decide if maybe that one-on-one interaction will be great, or shelf it and try something else. But you gotta just actively try and create these things.
And I think the more once you do that, I think the more you can schedule them and get them on the books is a real important part, because it's easy to go, oh, we should do that again sometime. That was really fun, right?
Right.
But to be intentional and purposeful in terms of scheduling them and getting them, that was part of what the book talked about, was the weekly bowling alley. You went on your bowling night and you did that. There was a weekly bridge night where you went and you played cards with the neighbors and the people that were involved in that. And it was an every week thing, and it was regularly scheduled. And that was the time you looked forward to being able to go be with other people, relax, fun, laugh, whatever. And so that's kind of gotten lost, I think, is that scheduling piece of it and being committed to that, because it does take commitment. And yeah, there are times when something comes up and you can't make it that week, but other people are going, and it's not going to ruin the whole night. So I think that there's that commitment piece is important. Because how many times have you done it? Oh yeah, that was great. We should do that again sometime. And then a year goes by, you still haven't seen your friends. You're like, Jesus. It's huge. Do you think, because you're younger, do you think it's easier for maybe older, and I say older guys, but older people to commit to third spaces than maybe somebody in their 30s?
Well, I think it's funny you say that, because I think the short answer is yes. But I think maybe not quite the way that you're saying. I think kids' lives up definitely through high school, they have third spaces just like shoved down their throat. You got school, you got sports events, you got, you name
birthday parties,
you name, right. Yeah. You name the thing, kids got loads of them, and they're constantly trying things out. They're constantly, that's their the social aspect of that is so much more important than even a lot of the actual structure of the events, the schooling, the whatever. I think the social osmosis that comes along with just being around other people like that is huge. But it's never something that kids do intentionally for the most part. It's kind of like forced down upon you from your parents, or just the way that you just have to go to school or whatever. And then some people go to college and it continues. Some people go to technical schools and it continues a little bit there. But really after that, like, you're kind of out on your own. And you sort of, if you stay around, or you are lucky enough to have the friends from your schooling kind of stay around you, it's a lot easier to kind of continue that on. But I think over time, as you get older, and so-and-so takes a job over here, this person takes a job over there, you grow apart, you're no longer interested in, I don't know, whatever dune buggies that he does, but you're interested in fishing or whatever, and you just kind of grow apart. I think all of a sudden you wake up in your 30s, 10 years later, and you're like, wait a second, where did everybody go? And so I think you lose the skills of like pushing yourself into these spaces just from life happening. You get busy at work, you have kids, you spend a lot more time in your first and second spaces, and then third spaces become much more uncomfortable in a way, unless you're actively exercising. There's people who are good at that, so it's not a blanket statement, but you kind of go through this phase, this trough of like, I don't, like, where'd everybody go? And so I do think it looks on the surface that older people are better at doing it, but I think it's because you've gone through the trough of like, fuck, I got to do the hard work of like making this a thing. And so you build up that skill and you do it. And so that's kind of my opinion as to why it would look like it's easier for older people. I think it's just a skill that you have to learn at some point.
Yeah, I absolutely, in terms of having been through that trough of right, it is. I think there's an aspect too, like when you have kids, and there's a period of time when, if you have multiple kids, it's this one's doing that, this one's doing that, this one's doing that. Your third spaces almost become the parents of, whatever team your kid's playing on. And sometimes that can be great. Most times it's not that great. I think it's really unique when you find an actual team full of parents who enjoy hanging out together. And so having been through that, the idea of there's some fatigue that goes along with that because you're so consumed with going to all of these things or doing all of these things that by the time it's for you to create your own third space, maybe that seems a little laborious. So you're not maybe as likely when you're younger because you're recovering and getting yourself ready for the next thing you got to take your kid to. So I definitely think there's something about being wiser through experience and discovering what's important. For me, that discovery is third spaces. I have been so dedicated to my life revolving around my family and kids and then my work, right? That home, that first and second places, that third spaces now that maybe I have, my kids are older, they're going on doing their own things now. They're way more independent. Now I have more time and there's a need. There's an empty space that is being fulfilled when I am engaged in third spaces now more than ever before. So that piece for an older guy definitely is real.
I think also the one differentiation there needs to be for guys and probably for girls, but I'm not a girl, so I can't say. For guys, you definitely need a guys only third space. Some aspect in your life where there's it's just guys. I think a lot of times, and there's a ton of great times that have come from doing things, couples, with your wife, and you go out with another couple, and or you even if it's just you with your daughter and you have just you two are going out and doing something with other dads and daughters. There's definitely still benefit to doing that, but it doesn't fully replace just having a guys only thing.
I would agree wholeheartedly. There are jokes that I need to share that I can't with my kids or my wife. Let's just be honest. No, but I agree that you just need to be dudes. There are pressures and there are things that we feel that are real, they're valid, and we're not always great at being able to voice them or articulate them. And I think when you're around other dudes and other guys in that third space, it's easier to maybe tap into some of that stuff. The numbers show the depression and the anxiety and all that stuff is rising, and not just in young kids, but in men. The expectations of providing and protecting, that takes precedence over everything else. And we've been messaged and built to be indestructible, and we take that stuff on. All guys space, when we're able to do that and just hang out with our buddies and our friends, gives us a place to where we can vent those things. If nothing else, I know that I can go with my boys and I can just complain and bitch and get it out, and that's better than nothing.
Right.
Most times I get help in those realms. When I do that, I get help back. That's valuable. That helps me stay grounded and keep things in perspective even more. So absolutely, positively, you have to create spaces with just men. That's important.
Yeah. And I think it might not be the right thing. Maybe it is the right thing. I don't know. But I think there is something, when it comes to that provider, protector that you just mentioned, where you put on these facades in a way. And again, couple time is awesome, but sometimes like you can't be truly your full self in some of those situations because you have, rightly or wrongly, have different things you're projecting out into the world. And so creating a space where you can, just try and drop as many of those things as possible. And it's not easy. That part's not easy. That's a whole nother conversation as well. But
Right.
Where you can remove as much of that friction as possible, where it's not, you're not trying to impress or whatever. It's huge.
And I think that's what, ultimately what we've created with GFW is that unguarded place. We don't have to feel guarded in what we do. We have people around us that don't judge, and we can just be authentically who we are without any guards up. And that's tough to do. That's hard. That takes time to create. That's not something that you're going to just whip up in no time at all. It takes time and effort and commitment and all those things. So, but it's invaluable.
That's what we want to do here at Guys Fishing Weekend is, on the project side, not our personal Guys Fishing, but on the project side of Guys Fishing Weekend. And the whole point is to try and remove the friction in whatever way we can to help create these spaces. Whether it's helping create spaces at fly or tackle shops across the country where every Thursday night it's just guys literally not coming to tie flies, not coming to do whatever. They're just like literally coming to be guys, or, helping guys find and plan trips where they can go and do these types of things together. There's a number of different things that can exist, and that we want to do with this. And so I think that's why third spaces are so important to us.
Yeah, I think they're probably the backbone of what our business is all about. Creating that community, creating opportunities for third spaces. And yeah, it's a deep core value for us in terms of what we want to achieve and what we want to help do with the community around fishing. So as a way to get into it. So nice, dude.
100%. Gotta make it happen for everybody.
Right on, dude. My earphones just went out. I can't hear anything.
Oh, well, that's not good. We should probably end it here then. I'll sign language to you.
Yeah, I can't. Yeah.
I love you. Love
you, dude. Right on, bro.
Right, man.
Good timing.
Right, Talk later.
All right.
See ya.
Bye.
That's all for today's episode. Thanks for listening. Make sure to visit our website, guysfishingweekend.com, to check out the GFW merch, sign up for our newsletter, and learn how to get involved with the community. We appreciate you spending even a little bit of your week with us and are glad to have you along on the journey. Stay legendary and happy fishing.